If you if you do not want to be seen in the video that will be posted on our website, you can remove your video box. So it'll only be your name that'll show up on the posting as we see it. So just some starting moments that I just want to acknowledge that us at the University of the Fraser Valley at the South Asian Studies Institute, we are located on the unceded and ancestral territory of the First Nations people, the Stolo people of the Stolo Nation, people of the river. The river is very vital to our communicative links in the communities and holds within the history of our nations as well as our settlements. I am an uninvited settler on this land, and I acknowledge my privilege of living and working in the Fraser Valley. And I work very hard to reconcile myself to the truth that we are hearing every day. And I take a moment to bow my head in acknowledging the discovery of a mass grave in Kamloops of 251 children last week. And we all are heartbroken by this discovery and share our condolences with the communities that are affected and the families who now know that their children have been found and that they can be named. We work towards reconciliation to this truth, and we hope that we can be part of the solidarity movement that is happening across the world and in Canada around knowing the inequities of our world. I also acknowledge my caste privilege, and I work very hard to dismantle my own privilege in my work and in my private life. Um, I welcome Yogendra Yadav today to our territory and to our university. I will tell you that the program is about an hour long, and Yogendra will have about 40 minutes to speak, and we will have some questions and answers at the end. You may be able to ask your question, but I would really recommend that you keep it very brief and ask the question directly of Yogendra, and then he will answer. Um, I also want to acknowledge the pandemic that is swirling around us, and especially in India, and want to acknowledge the people that are dying at a very difficult rate to acknowledge and understand. And if we can be standing in solidarity with the people that are suffering right now in India. I also want to acknowledge the 470 people that have died in the farmers' movement in Delhi and around Delhi. The farmers' movement is now in its 6 months. Last week, on the 26th of May, and the day was observed as a Black Day all over the country at the call of the Samyukta Kisan Morcha. At the South Asian Studies Institute, we are studying the farmers' movement, and we are working on understanding the diasporic response to the movement. And this talk is part of a series of discussions and dialogues and learning that we are undertaking for the next 2 years. The cold, the rain, the storms, the pandemic, the heat have not deterred the farmers in their struggle. As I said, 470 lives have been lost since the beginning of the movement. The movement actually started in June 2020 in Punjab, shortly after the government promulgated ordinances under cover of chaos that was part of the pandemic. The movement has been a peaceful protest that has withstood divisive forces of communal violence, of police brutality, of government obstinacy, and the ignorance against the wishes of the people, standing right at the doorstep at the seat of power in Delhi. As India struggles with the huge unacceptable loss of life due to the pandemic, and governance as we know it in a democracy is crumbling, there has been a total disregard to the plight of farmers' needs and livelihoods, and the demands continue. Dr. Darshan Pal, one of the leaders of the SKM, asserted recently in an interview with The Wire, and he said, and I quote, "We cannot just retreat. We have to be prepared to sacrifice our lives in the form of exposure, cold, heat, or COVID. We will not stop." The Wire also reports that throughout July and August of last year, there were tractor marches and protest meetings in villages, followed by submitting of memoranda to the district administration, as well as to the Chief Minister of Punjab and the Prime Minister. Between 7 to 10 September of 2020, there was a call for a jail bharo andolan, which is encouraging peaceful protest and courting arrest to bring light to the movement. And the movement clearly started at that point to build up towards a greater mass support. The diasporic response in Canada and the world over with support has been mostly both moral and financial. New leaders, both young and old, have come forward and risen from within our midst, bringing global attention to the protests in our own unique way. And we both question the Indian government's laws and the inaction of the courts to bring justice to the people of India as they demand it. Today, the government of India is under direct threat of negligence on this account and on the account of the pandemic. We have with us a distinguished scholar who will speak to the ongoing farmers' struggle in India as it completes 6 months. Yogendra ji will speak to how it has attracted global attention. The Indian diaspora has taken a special interest and played a key role in this movement. What makes for this unexpected and extraordinary success of this movement, he will speak to that, and any lessons that we have learned, and what the movement has achieved in the first 6 months, and the roadmap, as well as the challenges ahead, and what can we do about the future of this Indian democracy. I would like to take a moment to introduce Dr. Inderjeet Maan, who will speak for a few moments about his work at SASI and who has made the connection with Yogendra and brought him here today for us. And thank you, Inder, for doing that, arranging to give us some of his precious time. Inder Maan. Oh, Inder, you need to unmute.
Hello, Yogendra ji. Good evening. So I am Inder Maan. I'm working with SASI, writing a paper on Canadian diaspora as a response to ongoing farmers' movement in India. I'm especially looking for how Canadian diaspora, Canadian mainly South Asian diaspora, is affecting from all three laws, and as well as how the diaspora is reacting to the movement, to the laws. So I am making the information mature and looking the information about the farmers movement in India and how its reaction go beyond and across the world. So uh, it is great honor for us. We are listening a person special, Yogendra Yadav today, who is specialist in this field. So thank you for Yogendra ji having a time for us today. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, Inder. I also want to quickly introduce Hannah Mann, who is creating a documentary on the farmers' movement in BC and how the movement has still kept us engaged over the last, since January. Hannah is a young student out of University of York in Toronto and is a filmmaker, documentary filmmaker. I'm going to ask Dr. Nicola Mooney to introduce Yogendra, but before I do that, I just want to acknowledge that with us is our Dean of Arts, Dr. Jacqueline Nolte, who is a great supporter of our work and has again, so we're so happy that you've taken time out. I know how busy you are, Jacqueline, to come and spend time with us. So thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Satwanda. I just want to let people know that it is not with disrespect that I have to leave at 9:30 for a meeting.
Yeah, of course, I truly understand.
I'm most honored to be present. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacqueline. And thank you for your continued support for our work. Dr. Nicola Mooney is shouldn't say good friend of Yogendra, is a relative of Yogendra in a friendly way and in a familial way. Dr. Nicola Mooney will introduce Yogendra before we give him the floor. Nicola is a friend of SASI. She's a senior associate. She's an anthropologist and she teaches in the Department of Social Culture Media Studies. She's kind enough to have brought Yogendra to us in 2011, 10 years ago, when Yogendra came to BC, and he spoke on his recently published book, Crafting State Nations, India and Other Multinational Democracies. So over to you, Nicola.
Thanks, Satwinder. You forgot one rishta, that we are sisters.
Yes, yes, that too.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. It's my sincere privilege to speak to you this morning from Saltamuk, the beautiful, sacred, and ancestral territory of the Stalo peoples, in order to introduce our very distinguished speaker. Yogendra Yadav is a renowned academic, political analyst, public commentator, and social justice activist who brings formidable insight, resolute conviction, and deep commitment to all of his pursuits. I'm going to take a few minutes to highlight some of his many accomplishments. Yogendra earned his BA from Rajasthan University, his MA from JNU in Delhi, and his MPhil from Punjab University, Chandigarh, where he taught political science for a number of years. He's a former affiliate of the Center for the Study of Developing Societies in Delhi, where he was senior fellow and founding director of Lokniti, a research program on comparative democracy. He has also served on India's University Grants Commission, the Governing Council of the Indian Council of Social Science Research, and the Governing Board of the Indian Institute of Advanced Study in Shimla. He has also held several prestigious overseas fellowships at Columbia University, the University of Michigan, and the Institute of Advanced Study in Berlin, among others. Yogendra has published numerous academic articles and books. Among his works are the co-edited volume Electoral Politics in Indian States, published by Oxford University Press in 2009, the co-authored books State of Democracy in South Asia, also published by Oxford in 2007, and Crafting State Nations, published by Johns Hopkins University Press in 2011, and his recent monograph, Making Sense of Indian Democracy, Theory as Practice, published by Permanent Black in 2020. This recent collation of his key essays was described in a review in the Indian Express as refined gold. Yogendra rose to national prominence in India in the late 1990s as a psephologist, delivering polling and elections commentary on a number of television channels, including Doordarshan, NDTV, and CNN-IBN, amid the efflorescence of non-state media in a liberalizing Indian economy that was also witnessing the rise of the BJP. Yogendra has also become a prolific contributor to a number of key news media, including newspapers such as the Indian Express, the Hindu, the Hindustan Times, and the Business Standard, periodicals such as the Economic and Political Weekly, Outlook India and India Today, and online sites such as The Print, The Wire, and The Quint. As some of you may have seen, he was recently featured on the BBC's Hard Talk, speaking on the farmers' movement. In 2009, the International Political Science Association honored then Professor Yadav with the first Global South Solidarity Award in recognition of outstanding work on the politics of the developing world. While this accolade rewarded his scholarship, he has done much to apply his work in the world beyond the academy in the decades since. Famously a former member of the Executive Council of the Aam Aadmi Party, Yogendra has been involved in numerous civil society campaigns, including the anti-corruption movement, nonviolent resistance seeking to enforce minimum support prices in agriculture, the Vote Nota or None of the Above campaign to encourage protest votes, and the anti-communal protests against the National Register of Citizens and the Citizenship Amendment Act, which prohibits citizenship naturalization of non-Indian Muslims living in India. Yogendra is co-founder of Swaraj Abhiyan, a political organization that aims to realize sovereign citizenship in all domains of life, political, economic, social, and cultural. The deeply moral and decolonizing tenor of Yogendra's activism and resistance has been most strongly grounded in farmers' issues. In 2015, within Swaraj Abhiyan, he formed and became convener of the Jai Kisan Andolan, or roughly speaking, the triumph of the farmers' movement. Like many South Asians, Yogendra has strong roots in the agricultural communities of his birthplace, Rewari in Haryana, and of where he grew up, which is Sri Ganganagar in Rajasthan. He has a nuanced understanding of the challenges and outcomes of post-Green Revolution farming in India and their amplification amid global neoliberalism, as well as the strategic profile and intelligence to raise and highlight the issues as a scholar, public intellectual, and student and leader of people's movements for social justice. Indeed, among Yogendra's recent books is Farmers Under Modi Raj, Double Income or Double Jeopardy, which concludes that Modi's regime is the most anti-farmer government in the history of independent India. Since November 2020, Yogendra has served on the 7-member Central Committee of the Samyukt Kisan Morcha, or United Farmers Front, a national coalition.
Nicola, you're muted. All of a sudden, you've become muted.
What did you last hear?
This, the Sangyukt Morcha.
Thank you. This is a national coalition of over 40 Indian farmers unions formed to conduct satyagraha against the 2020 Indian Agriculture Acts and negotiate with the government for their repeal. While Yogendra's engagement with the farmers' movement is firmly located in contemporary political struggles, it cannot and must not be seen as mere politicking. I have had the distinct honor of knowing Yogendra and his family for almost 25 years, and throughout he has worked earnestly with great dedication, bravery, and personal sacrifice, and at not inconsiderable risk and cost on these critical social justice and equality issues, inspired by the Gandhian ideals of his parents and his own deeply moral commitment to social justice. Let's hear now from our remarkable guest. Pranam or Ji Ayanu Yogendra Bhai Sahab.
The floor is yours, Yogendra, if you can unmute, please.
Thank you. I don't know if I should begin by thanking Nicola, or I should begin by alerting and warning all of you. Maybe I should alert. I'll do the thanking later. I should alert you to two things. One is what Dr. Mooney spoke about. Much of that is my previous life. I'm currently just a social and political activist. Andolan Jivi, as our Prime Minister would like to call all of us. That's all. So I've honestly forgotten most of the things Nicola Mooney spoke about. And second is, of course, the full disclosure, which she hinted at. She happens to be married to one of my closest childhood friends. So if you, I could only say, please, to use your filters in taking her remarkably appreciative words. I should begin by thanking the university, the Fraser Valley University, the South Asian Studies Institute, for this opportunity to speak here. And I'm honored to see Professor Nolte among the audience here. Very happy to see Dr. Mann and my host, Professor Benz. Thank you all of you for coming here. And thanks for this opportunity to reflect, really, because when you're in the midst of the movement, you are running from one meeting to the other meeting. You do write occasionally, as I do every week, but most of these things are, you want to communicate so that to involve people in the agitation more. So, there is an angle, there is less of a reflective sense. And in fact, those are not spaces where you can reflect. And sometimes Indian public life does not encourage much reflection, because any reflection would actually come with accusations. So I take it, I know it's a public lecture, but this is also a moment to reflect, to step back and actually think about what we've been through. Let me begin by saying what I will not do today, which is I will not analyze the three laws, because that would have been a different lecture altogether. Analyzing the three laws, what the implications are, how they affect different kinds of communities. I would be very happy to answer questions on that, but that's not what I'm doing, because frankly, that's all I've done for the last 6 months. Every day I've done that in Hindi, in English, in my limited Punjabi. I've done that over and over and over again. So I thought I could use this occasion to step back a bit and think about the movement. So I thought I would begin with a confession and invite you to that thought experiment. Today is 2nd of June in India, also in Canada, 2nd of June, yes. If you had asked me 1 year ago, that is to say, on 2nd of June 2020, if you had asked me, look, these laws have been announced. They have not yet been enacted, because remember, these laws were originally enacted in the form of an ordinance. The parliament was not in session. And the government said there's such an emergency to bring these laws that they have to be brought in as an ordinance. The ordinance was brought in on the 5th of June. So if you asked me on the 2nd of June last year, these three laws are being brought in. What do you think of it? I would have said, well, that's a disaster. These are very bad laws. I don't know what the text of the laws is, but from what they announce, this doesn't seem to be the kind of thing we need. And in fact, I had indeed criticized the laws right in the beginning. If you had then asked me, so what are the farmers going to do? I would have said, well, farmers will protest. If you had asked me then, okay, how big will the protest be? And if anyone had said, these three laws would lead to an unprecedented historic movement of the farmers, where lakhs of farmers will surround Indian national capital, I would have stopped you and said, friend, don't dream. Don't sell me those dreams. I know this won't happen. If you had asked me 1 year ago, are these laws going to lead to such an unprecedented movement? I would have probably said, no, they won't. Why would I have said that? And that's a confession I wanted to make. I would have said, look, there are structural reasons why all India farmers movement don't happen. The structural reasons are that India is dominated by poor and small farmers with very, very small holding. An average holding of an Indian farmer is just slightly above 1 hectare. That's the average holding size. I would have said, these kinds of farmers, they cannot afford to get into a movement of this kind. Number 2, I would have said, there is a problem of collective action, a standard problem of social science, that Indian farmers are just so completely fragmented along the lines of region. If you meet the farmer in my part of the world, in Haryana, South Haryana, which is kind of an extension of Rajasthan, semi-arid zone. And if you happen to travel to Kerala, you could easily imagine you've been to 2 different countries, if not 2 different continents altogether. And for someone to then say that these would come together to have one kind of a struggle, I would have said, look, collective action doesn't happen like this. Third, I would have said that the regime is so oppressive that this kind of regime would simply not allow such a large gathering to happen. And I would have said, my dear friend, don't you see there is a nationwide lockdown? There is a pandemic. In this, do you expect a nationwide agitation? So a year ago, the wise ex-social scientist in me would have told you, look, this kind of a movement will not take place. It did. In social science and in life, we learn more from our cognitive failures. And when we confront them honestly and say, okay, today I'm sure if you ask everyone, most of my friends would say, of course this was going to happen. But to my mind, the biggest lesson in history is that things that happen are not the only things that could have happened. Things could go in very many directions. And this is just one of the possibilities. In fact, this is one of the least likely possibility which actually happened. So there is something very surprising about farmers' movement in the shape that it took in India last winter. There's something stunning. There's something so completely strange, weird about what happened in reality. No, I bet not many people, today anyone might claim anything, but I bet a year ago, hardly anyone would have said, maybe Rajewalji would have thought that. But I can't think of many people who would have imagined that a farmers' protest of this scale, of this magnitude, with this political weight and impact would actually happen in India within the next few months. What is surprising about this movement? Not merely that it happened, but what is surprising is, number one, the sheer volume, the number of people who were at the end of November the sheer numbers were staggering. India hasn't seen a protest like this in the last 3-4 decades. I have not been able to estimate the numbers, but all kinds of estimates have been thrown around. And I guess in the week leading up to 26th of January, the famous Tractor March, the number could be close to 1 million. This is the number of farmers who are traveling some 400 kilometers, 500 kilometers to come to national capital at that point. The sheer expanse of the movement. You know, if you had asked me a year ago, would this movement go to Rajasthan? I would have said maybe not beyond district Ganganagar, Hanumangarh, maybe Churu, not beyond that. But it actually spread. The manner in which the geographical spread of the movement is staggering. We don't get to hear very much about South India, but I can tell you that in Karnataka, the kind of response this movement has had is astonishing. In Tamil Nadu, farmers have come out to support this. In Assam, they have supported it. So this is not just a Punjab, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh story that we are told. Third, the longevity of it. When farmers came to the outskirts of Delhi, some newspaper reporters asked them, so are you prepared? And one farmer said, well, if necessary, we'll stay for 6 months. That was flashed on national television, not because anyone took it seriously, because everyone thought it is such a metaphor. 6 months farmer will stay outside Delhi. And now we are actually in the 7th month of the protest. No one believed it would last the period that it indeed has. And the sheer tenacity of the farmers in staying there through Indian winter. Now, I hesitate to talk about the severity of Indian winter, speaking to Canadians. But it is one thing to take that winter from nicely warmed houses. It's quite another thing to take what would be a mild winter for most of you, not even winter, you might even call it pleasant summer, but to actually stay out without much heating. And to take the kind of things we've gone through. Just 3 days ago, I can tell you, just 3 days ago, we had the famous Rajasthan desert in one of the morchas where I'm in charge. This is Shahjahanpur. This is on the border of Haryana and Rajasthan. And 3 days ago, I get a call. I was in Delhi at that point. I get a call. There is a storm. I said, fine, let's try and close our things. Let's put some blankets and something to prevent us. They said, no, every single tent has collapsed. So 3 days ago, we discovered within an hour and a half, within actually 15 minutes of the actual storm, all the temporary structures that we had put there, almost every single structure collapsed. This happened 3 days ago. Not even worth reporting. No one took note of it. And for the last 3 days, we've been now collecting money, putting those temporary structures again, finding some place at least to stay in this during the sun and while we can sleep in open. So the sheer tenacity of the farmers. I remember one of those days when it rained. Now, a cold and wet night is my nightmare. I'm not sure if everyone shares that. For me, the worst thing that can happen is for it to rain during a cold day. And that too, when you are in a tent and the tent is leaking. So I get up in the morning, I see all the tents are leaking there. And I go to this tent where I see their mattresses are wet, their blankets, or rajai as we call it, the quilt is also wet. I go and apologize to my colleagues. I say, I'm really sorry to see that this is how you slept tonight. My tent was much better. At least my mattress was not drenched. The farmer smiled and he said, actually, you see, this was very nice. I said, what can be nice about this, sleeping in this cold and wet bed? He said the nice thing is that it has rained, which means that for the next 10 days, farmers don't have to worry about watering their fields, and we will have more farmers coming for the movement. Such a nice thing, he smiled. Now, this is the tenacity with which the farmers have stood up for the last 6 months. Why did it happen? I think it remains a question. It's a question that historians will ask, social scientists will ask, and try and answer. This is a genuine puzzle. How come something which looked as improbable as it did a year ago, how did it happen? And it happened in such a spectacular fashion. I'll offer two sets of reasons. One is, of course, history. Because in so many situations, history gives us good answers to something that we have no sense of. I would suggest that the farmers' movement did not begin on the 26th of November when the whole country noticed it. Farmers' movement began much before the television crew started noticing it. In fact, much before even we notice it. If a historian were to write a history of this movement, I would encourage her to have her first chapter on the prehistory of the farmers' movement, which is to say, prior to the coming of these laws and ordinances. Punjab has a history of 2 decades of farmers' movement, very organized. I must tell you, farmers' movement of Punjab are the envy of any farmer activist. And all the time I'm telling my Haryana colleagues, Baba, learn something from these Punjabis. Why can't we have Jathebandis like them? So Punjab has a long history of farmers' movement, and they are organized like very few movements are anywhere in the country, at least not in India. I've not seen something of that kind anywhere in India. So there's a prehistory of 2 decades in Punjab of farmers' movement working together. And outside Punjab, there is at least a 4-year history of which I have been a participant, of trying to bring farmers all over the country on a single platform. In June 2017, there was firing on the farmers in Madhya Pradesh. Mandsaur is the name of the place where police fired on the farmers and 6 farmers died on the spot. That spurred us to come together, and we said farmer organizations from all over the country, we at least should have one national platform where we can come together. So within 10 days, we floated a platform. That platform is now one of the largest platforms of farmers in the country. It is called All India Kisan Sanghas Coordination Committee. It's quite a mouthful, AIKSCC. This platform has had more than 200 farmers' organizations on one single platform, sharing an agenda, which has been working now for 4 years, which was working for 3 years when the movement began. And this AIKSCC is actually the organization which gave one of the early calls of Delhi Chalo. I'm saying all this, and from that emerged the Sanyukta Kisan Morcha as we know it today. AIKSCC said, we are not enough. Although we have 200 organizations, we are not enough. We need to bring in other farmers' organizations. So everyone came together, AIKSCC, Kisan Mazdoor Mahapanchayat, other organizations came, and then we formed what today is called Sanyukta Kisan Morcha. But Sanyukta Kisan Morcha was not born overnight. There is this 3-year-long history of farmers' organization coming together, working together, organizing massive rallies. We organized one in 2018, in 2019 outside the Indian Parliament. These were very large gatherings of over 100,000 people outside the Indian Parliament. All this went into the making of what we today see as the farmers' movement in Delhi. That's a prehistory. Then there is a formative phase, which Punjabis noticed, but no one else noticed. This is from June to November, where the whole of Punjab was engulfed by this movement. But the rest of the country didn't know very much about what was happening. This is when singers, artists, everyone came in, and in a small geography, small by Indian standards, Punjab is tiny for India. In a small geography, cultural and ideological hegemony was created for the movement. Everyone was on the same page. This had already happened by 20th of September in Punjab. I traveled on that day through Punjab, and I was stunned. I had never seen this kind of unanimity in a society on such a contentious issue. So by September, cultural ideological hegemony of the movement had been established in Punjab. So that's a formative period. And then comes the big bang moment, 26th November, when farmers arrive at the doorsteps of Delhi. Since then, that is the real history of the movement as the world has seen. The world, that is when it was unveiled to the rest of the world. That phase, the third phase, itself has had three phases within it now. There is 26th November to 26th January moment, when it's all about morchas. There were 9 morchas at one point. While we talk of Tikri and Singhu, we remember 2, and sometimes we talk about Ghazipur. But I can tell you on 26th of January, because we were sitting in police negotiations, so we actually counted and got everyone there. There were 9 morchas outside Delhi on 25th of January. So that's a morcha moment. After 26th of January, for the next month and a half, I would say almost 2 months, is the moment of Mahapanchayats. 26th of January is when the tractor rally takes place, the historic rally. Also, the Red Fort incident takes place, which is used then by the government to try and actually kill the movement there and then. That is the moment for the next 3 days. The government, I'm sorry to say, had such vicious plans, which included, we fear, an attempt to create a Hindu-Sikh dispute. Almost a replay of 1984 is what some of the stooges of the ruling party had in mind, or so we suspect. The movement came out of that with the famous Ghazipur episode where Rakesh Tikait cries, and that moment of his crying becomes a moment for farmers' self-assertion. This is what you are doing to our men. Okay, we'll come back. And farmers come back this is almost like a cinematic moment when the farmers come back. So the next 2 months after that are moments of Mahapanchayats. This is the phase of Mahapanchayats. The real focus shifts away from the 6 morchas outside Delhi. By then we had 6 morchas outside Delhi, and shifts to Mahapanchayats, these large gatherings of farmers that take place all over North India. And when I say large, some of these had more than 100,000 farmers present in it. I have myself addressed 1 or 2 of them. And routinely, they would have about 10,000 farmers, because in India, anything less than 10,000 is considered small. It's a very small rally. If it's less than 1,000, they would say token rally, symbolic, and so on. So these were very large. So the government thought they were going to suppress the movement, and it actually spread. Instead of being suppressed, it spread. And it made it easier for farmers to participate. Now they did not have to come all the way to Delhi. Farmers' movement had come to their district. It had come to their village, to their town. Made it easier. So that was the 2 months of Mahapanchayats. The last 2 months, I would say, are moments of us. It is a bit of a lull, simply because COVID restrictions have come into play. And the government is once again using the media to put the farmers in the dock. And frankly, we are not interested in gathering. We are not interested in any large gathering of crowd, because we are sensitive to concerns of the pandemic. So in the outer thing, there is a bit of a lull. But inside, if you happen to read stories coming from districts, from villages, the movement has now entered the homes. It has entered homes. It has entered the hearts. 26th of May, we gave a call to Black Flag Day. And within villages, in ordinary households, the call was responded to in a way which has simply stunned the government. They never expected that a movement would be able to get people to put the black flags atop their houses. So that's where we stand today. I know many of us would be curious about what's happening now, what's the way forward, is anything happening, are the negotiations on? Frankly, I'm not so concerned. I'm not so worried. I'm not so worried because I do know the government is on the back foot, notwithstanding their bluster, which is the only way they know how to conduct themselves. So notwithstanding the bluster of the regime, the fact is that they're petrified. The fact is that the regime, the supporters of the regime, their small leaders, all are rushing to Delhi to tell their central leaders, please do something about this farmers' movement. Otherwise, our political careers are ruined. I can share this information of this morning in Delhi. So the newspapers in Delhi report that the Chief Minister of Haryana, Mr. Manohar Lal Khattar, was in the national capital yesterday. The newspaper says he was there basically to talk to the Prime Minister about finding a way out of the farmers' movement, with a clear plea to say, please strike a deal with the farmers. Otherwise, we are politically ruined. That's the message apparently the BJP chief minister is carrying to Delhi. And I'm told the same message is coming to the ruling party from all over. So while they delay, while on the face of it, the government says, we are not going to negotiate with the farmers, they don't have too many options. Farmers are not going to wither away. The government, the regime thought that they could do to farmers what they did to NTCA protest, namely to tire them out, to frighten them away, and to create such a shindy in the media that farmers would be left with no option except to vacate. This has not happened. This shall not happen. And the regime now realizes it. So the only option is to negotiate. And I do think the government will have to come and speak to the farmers. The longer they delay, the worse the situation gets for the government, not so much for the farmers. And frankly, the Bengal result has strengthened the hands of the farmers because the regime is now on the back foot. The regime knows, and they do know, while we have not made a formal announcement, but the regime does know. They understand politics, and they know that while farmers' movement, all of us had only 6 weeks of campaigning to do in Bengal, we would have 6 months to do something in Uttar Pradesh. Uttar Pradesh election is about 7, 8 months away. And my sense is that while this government doesn't understand the language of constitutionality, they don't understand economics, they don't understand ethics or even humanity, they understand psephology. They understand elections. They understand the calculus of votes. And I don't think they want farmers of North India traveling to every single village of Uttar Pradesh to campaign against BJP. So I would not be surprised if the government comes back to a negotiating table. And frankly, these 3 laws are dead. The laws are dead in that no government would have the courage to bring these laws, to actually implement these laws on the ground. The trouble is that the government now doesn't want to, this is what I keep saying in public meetings, that the only thing is for us to collect a death certificate. And the Prime Minister doesn't want to issue that. That's the problem. So the Prime Minister has made it a matter of his personal prestige. And this is what happens to authoritarian regimes very often. You get into, in order to prove your power, in order to not be seen as conceding, in order not to be seen as being pressurized, you get into impossible games. And that is what is happening to the Prime Minister. Every day it gets prolonged. It has cost for the farmers. Professor Benz reminded us that 470 farmers, colleagues of ours, have lost their lives. They've been martyred. Yes, there's huge cost for us, but there are also very big cost for the political cost for the government. So to my mind, the way out is for the government to step back and to open negotiations. That will happen sooner or later. But I don't want to conclude without saying, making two set of remarks. One is, what has the movement achieved? That's a question everyone asks us. You are there for 6 months. This is a typical Indian television question. You are here for the last 6 months. The laws have not been taken away. What have the farmers achieved? I want to underline, and I want to tell everyone here, farmers' movement has already achieved 3 things that no farmer movement had achieved in the last 40, 50, 60 years, maybe not since independence. 1, farmers have regained their self-respect, their self-esteem. In an Indian university, the son or daughter of a farmer would never be able to say, my father is a farmer. Today, the same son or daughter carries a sticker, a t-shirt that says, no farmer, no food, no future. They can hold their head high and say, I belong to farming family. That's a huge advantage. That's a very big thing. Regaining self-esteem is for community, is more important than winning elections, than getting a few things done, etc. Number 2, farmers have realized their political clout. Farmers had ceased to exist in political calculations of Indian politicians because they knew they could take them for granted. This movement has taught one lesson to every single politician in India, from the ruling party or from opposition, Mr. Modi or Mr. Amrinder Singh. And I don't have an English word for it. It's only a Punjabi word that captures it. Don't take panga with farmers. If you take panga with farmers, this can be very costly. That's the lesson. And farmers now know. So they've recovered political clout. And third, and to my mind, even bigger achievement, is the unity of farmers of India in conditions where such a unity looked like an impossible dream, across regional diversity, across crop diversity, across class divisions, across caste divisions, across communal divisions. This was an impossible project. This movement within the last 6 months has nearly achieved that impossible. I know my time is running out, so I would just conclude with a final set of observations about what are the lessons learned. I'll just recount 3 or 4 lessons about what has made this move, what has, so in a sense, the question is, a year ago, I would have said such a movement is unlikely. Now that it has happened, what lessons have I learned? Number 1, never underestimate the moral economy of the peasant. I know I'm speaking to university students, so I would encourage you to read something by James Scott. It's about moral economy of the peasant. Farmers have a certain worldview, a sense of right and wrong, which does not always follow the sense of legal and illegal. And history teaches us that as and when a regime has gone against that basic sense of right and wrong of the farming communities, then farmers rebel against it. And what has happened in these 3 laws is that somehow it has run foul of the moral economy of the North Indian peasant. And then once you run foul of the moral economy of the peasant, they rebel. And what we are witnessing is equivalent of 19th century peasant rebellions of India. This is actually in same line with the Mopala rebellion of the late 19th century, of the Tebhaga movement and so on. These are moves, so it's a continuity of that. This is more a peasant rebellion than simply a farmers' movement. So never underestimate the moral economy of the peasant. Number two, learn to look at the new generation of Indian farmers. The new generation of Indian farmers, particularly from Punjab and Haryana, they wear jeans, they stay in villages, but they visit urban area, they visit the cities, they have smartphones, and they are very smart. So they have one foot in rural and one foot in urban. They read laws, they can read documents, they understand the language of legality and the Indian state. They cannot be fooled like farmers could be fooled 50 years ago. Third, coalitions make a big difference. This movement is all about coalition making. As I said, AIKSCC that we created 3 years ago was a grand coalition of 200 organizations. But Sanyukta Kisan Morcha, of which I'm involved in that 9-member committee now, is a coalition of coalitions. So it's a grand exercise in coalition building. And not only are we dealing with coalition of farmers, we are being supported by coalition of trade unions of the country, coalition of student organizations in the country, coalitions of veterans of the country. So coalitions make a difference. It's a resistance is about coalition building. That's my third lesson. Fourth lesson, closer to where I'm addressing where I'm addressing, is external support makes a difference. In this, the support of the Punjabi diaspora made a huge difference in the very early stage in communicating, in creating that cultural hegemony, in creating those conditions of complete cultural acceptance. There, the diaspora made a big difference. And yes, the material support coming from diaspora. I've grown up amongst Punjabis, so I know what Punjabi hospitality is like. But the rest of India discovered Punjabi hospitality only in the last 6 months. And it makes a big difference. But for that, would we have survived 6 months? Maybe we would have, but not the way we have. So global support makes a difference. And finally, and that's the last point I wish to make, never underestimate your opponent's capacity to make follies. Never underestimate your opponent's follies. They may look big, they may look very strong, they may look invincible, but when you actually confront them, they make stupid mistakes. They are not as strong as they appear to be. That's what I've learned in the last 6 months of the movement. These are some of the lessons that I go back with. The last point I wanted to make was that this struggle of the farmers is not only about what the farmers are doing. This struggle of the farmers is not only about the well-being and economic gains of the farmers. This struggle today has gone beyond the 3 laws, beyond the MSP for the farmers. And this struggle is now about recovering democratic spaces in India, resisting corporate takeover of Indian economy, recovering democracy in the political domain, recovering human rights. This struggle is about reclaiming the Indian Republic. Thank you.
Thank you, Ji. Thank you, Yogendra Ji, for very informative, as well as your analysis of what has happened in the past and where we are headed. I think you leave us with some hopeful perspectives about where we might be headed in the near future, and the idea that this movement has strengthened the resolve across the nation around coming together on a national platform, and that this movement will outlive just its one moment in these next 6 months or the future 6 months, but we'll outlive that in a much more comprehensive manner. So you've given us a really good idea of understanding and also your own perspectives of how the average farmer, the person on the ground, is starting to find his own self-esteem. I think his or her own self-esteem. I think that's been a really, I know for myself growing up in India that was a challenge, 70s, 80s, 90s onwards, and continues to be a challenge, especially in the urban centers. So to see that becoming a strong movement in terms of how young people see themselves and giving back to the communities, I think that's really powerful. So good to hear that insight. Wonderful insights that you've shared with us. The idea that the only option left is to negotiate is a good one for us to understand that there is hope for negotiation, and this is a peaceful movement, and that reconciliation will come one day and must come one day, and that people are digging in for the long haul, and they'll continue to do that. I think leadership in this one has been very unique in the sense that political leaders have not been given the kind of front platform, and that leaders from behind have come forward. That for us as observers in the diaspora has been very uniquely positioned as well, because we in the Punjabi diaspora, especially in BC, which has a very large population of Punjabi diaspora, we are invested in the politics of India heavily. And we have moral imperatives to be involved on the farmer side, being a large population of us being from the farming background. But I think there's a shift as well in terms of class and caste solidarities that we have seen across the region. We had Dr. Jodhka speak a month ago, and he's talked about how even that needs to be addressed within this movement. So the refreshing ideas of this movement, and how, as you ended by saying, creating a new republic that will have a stronger viewpoint in terms of the people, the power of the people, is something we are all in the diaspora, affirmed by, and we continue to pledge our support to the farmers movement in many unique ways. I know people around the room whom you don't know have already given so much of their time, energy, thoughts, ideas, financial support, rallies, protests in BC, and we bow to them for having taken this on so far away from the homeland and continuing this good fight. So thank you so much for giving us your insights at the end of the day. I know how tiring this is for you as well in terms of moving around the city and moving between your constituencies. So I will open the floor for a couple of questions. We have about 10 minutes. I would really, really, really recommend that either you put your question in the chat that I can curate, or that you only ask a question and try not to give a long commentary, which is hard to do because everybody has a perspective and everybody wants you to know that perspective and want to share that perspective with you. But I think if we can just ask questions, that would be very helpful to honor Yogendra's time and honor his presence here today. So I will open the floor.
May I?
Yes, Rajneesh. So Rajneesh, Dr. Rajneesh Dhawan is from Amritsar, Guru Nanak Dev University. He's a professor in English at the University of the Fraser Valley. Hanji.
Hello, Yogendra ji. Thank you. Always inspiring to listen to you. I just wanted to ask you, there was a write-up by Shekhar Gupta in the print about the 18-month deferment proposed by the government. And his analysis was that 18-month deferment was kind of a death certificate that, the farmers that you referred to. And apparently once the 18 months are over, Modi will be too close to elections to actually take the quote unquote panga with the farmers, so close to elections. That was Shekhar Gupta's analysis. I just wanted to have your comments on that.
Thank you, Rajneesh. Yogendra, you need to unmute.
At one level, I agree. At another, I don't. I agree that for someone like Mr. Modi to talk about 18 months is already to concede more than he has ever conceded to anyone. And yes, it is an implicit acknowledgement of the death of these bills. It is also an implicit acceptance that he would not bring it again. So basically, he's saying, don't ask me to sign a death certificate, just go. Take my word, I won't do it again. Now, so Shekhar could be right in reading these things the way he does. At the same time, looking at it from a farmer's point of view, what is so special about 18 months? What would happen in those 18 months? 18 months, would have ended if the government offered it in the early 2021. 18 months would end in say middle of 2022. What is so special about middle of 2022? Why would Mr. Modi, he would still have a year and a half to go. On what basis should farmers believe and assume that Mr. Modi will not change his mind when farmers are not around and he feels no threat, no pressure? What prevents Mr. Modi from wanting to bring this back again? And in any case, it is not about Mr. Modi. Let's say you have a new government. What guarantee do we have that a new government would not wish to play with the same things again? So farmers are quite justified in saying, please repeal it now, in front of our eyes. Once we leave, once we vacate, once we are no longer the nuisance to you, after that we are dependent on your goodwill. And if we could depend on your goodwill, we wouldn't have had to start this agitation in the first place. So it's a good piece of political analysis, but farmers need something more solid than a good political assessment. They need something solid in their hands, and that's not what we have now.
Thank you, Yogendra. Jagir Singh Kalon, you have a question?
Yadav ji, I would like to tell you that it is our good fortune that a leader like you is there in the Morcha. We have formed a committee here to support SKM in Toronto, and I am the executive committee member of that coordination committee. We have acted upon all the calls given by the SKM. So my question is that how it is that the SKM could not demarcate the disruptive elements, I would say undercover agents of the government before 26th of January. My second question is that a letter written to the government of India to reopen the dialogues, is it from a particular committee or a Sanyukt Kisan Morcha? Thank you.
Thank you, Kalon Saab. Your questions show that you are already so deeply aware and so minutely into the movement and what is happening here. Let me clarify the second question first. The letter written to the Prime Minister, which you would have noticed did not plead with the Prime Minister. It simply reminds the Indian Prime Minister that if the dialogue is not being reopened, you are responsible for that. The letter has been written and signed by the 9-member committee, of which I am also one of the members. It is an official communication of the Sanghas Kisan Morcha. I know one of our colleagues happened to have raised questions about it that must have reached you. But now the situation has been absolutely clarified. All the Punjab organizations met yesterday and have reconfirmed that yes, that letter to the Prime Minister is indeed the authentic voice of the Sanghas Kisan Morcha. In a large coalition like this, there are some small misunderstandings that keep happening, which is also related to the first question that you asked. It's a legitimate question. Why could we not identify agent provocateurs? Did we not fear something like this? I must confess that yes, we feared it. We fear it every day. We fear it for future. But Kalon Saab, in this, you see, what we are dealing with is not a canal. It's not a river. We are dealing with a sea of humanity. When you are traveling in Tikri border, it goes on for kilometers. I mean, for 25 kilometers, you see tents after tents after tents after tractor after trolley. And as you know, you have to have only one of them out of those thousands to make trouble. So yes, indeed, there were agent provocateurs who did play foul. Yes, it is very hard for anyone to be able to exactly specify and understand. I mean, we are not trained intelligence officers. We are political leaders. We made our best effort, and to this day, I say with pride that 99% of those who participated in that famous tractor march, they abided by the rules that we had laid down. The entire world, of course, looks at the remaining 1% or less than 1%, because that's what the media highlighted and played up. And I'm proud to say that as leadership, the very next day, we held a press conference and we owned moral responsibility for whatever happened. Very few movements do that, Kalonsa. So yes, we do that. That has taught us some lessons, and we are even more careful than ever before. Can I therefore assure that no such mistakes will ever happen again? I don't know, Kalonsa. These are very large gatherings where the only force people like us have is moral force.
Thank
But
you,
yes,
Yogendra.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yogendra, two questions I'm going to ask before Sukhdev Singh Chanda has a question as well, but two questions. One is, what is the support of Artiyas in the farmers movement, the middlemen? And the second question is this, we've been hearing a lot about how social media has been tried to be suppressed and stifled by the government right now in India. Can you give us some insights on those two things?
Second is again very easy. Both are straightforward questions. On social media, I mean, the government is that there are two ways in which this regime is coming down on social media. One is by using every possible legal and extra legal means to suppress social media. Now, so you see, if you go to my timeline, say I'm nobody for this regime. But they have deployed, I believe, at least 12 people whose only job, and I believe full-time paid job, is to go after me. Every day, I mean, if I were to tell you, it's a slight digression. After 26th of January, I received in one single day thousands of phone calls. I'm not exaggerating. I could not open my phone to make a phone call because by the time I would dial 3 digits, another call would come and disrupt it. So finally, in disgust, I had to shut down my phone. And that kept happening for 5 to 6 days. Now, this is impossible unless you have an organized force with technology, which has decided to invade a phone number. And what they did was that they actually put my phone number on large WhatsApp groups to say, this is Mr. Yadav's private phone number. Please do not call him. Please do not abuse him. Please do not use words of hatred. What does that mean? It means do call Mr. Yadav, do abuse him, and I've saved myself from legal consequences. I mean, I'm personally a victim of that. If you go to my Twitter account, the kind of things they write, I mean, I just stopped reading that stuff. So this is one tiny little trick that they use. But the big ones are, of course, visiting the Twitter office. So a Delhi police force visits. So what does Twitter do? Twitter in India finally mustered courage. They didn't have much, but finally they mustered courage. And they labeled one post by one of the BJP IT cell persons, which was a completely fake, forged video. They said this was disputed material or whatever is the Twitter terminology for that. Next day, you have Delhi police visiting Twitter office in Delhi. They, of course, have a nice excuse to do so, but the message is loud and clear. We would send police to your office if you dare do this to our men. So this is what they are doing to social media in every possible ways. And they're technologically smart people here. Please help me with something. My Twitter and Facebook accounts were growing a few years ago. Suddenly, my Facebook followership, or my whatever that is called, the number of people you follow you, suddenly stopped at 500,000. It stopped growing. Twitter following kept growing. It went up to 1.5 million. Facebook following suddenly stopped growing. I asked some technically smart people. They said, you don't know what the deal Facebook has with the government of India. You don't even know about that BJP and Facebook have a certain understanding that you would not be allowed to grow beyond a point. So this is the level at which these games are played. And not to mention the fact that BJP itself has such a large, so BJP does not just control social media by external intervention and such like. They actually have created their own social media accounts. So while you, an eminent academic, would struggle to get a blue tick, Mr. Amit Shah's son opens a Twitter account and he has a blue tick. All this happens every day. So there is so BJP is very actively operating on social media. They have actually factories. So what we call trolls, these are large offices in which, let's say, 500 people are sitting, and they have been assigned a job. Someone has been assigned a job to track Mr. Yadav and to post a few things. Someone else has been assigned another job. So they do it all the time. That's social media for you in India. So social media is not so social. It is about power and money.
Mhm.
Like mass media, we thought social media was outside the pale of these two big influences. No, that's not the case. On the first question of artiyas and middlemen, look, if the movement was led by middlemen, no middlemen would stay during Delhi winter at night and suffer the kind of things farmers have suffered. And if it was a middlemen's movement, it would have come apart in 3 days. Indian media, the Darbari media, the Godi media, would have taken us apart in 2 days if they could find even 20 middlemen. Have the Aratiyas or middlemen supported this movement? Yes, of course they have. The entire agrarian sector has supported us because everyone in Indian agriculture knows that their livelihood depends on this. So yes, they have supported it. Are they driving it? No, they are not. They cannot possibly do so.
Thank you, Yogendra. Sukhdev Singh Chand.
Thank you, Yogendra Yadav ji, for updating our information on the Kisan Morcha. You have very rightly said that ਸਰਕਾਰ ਨੇ ਕਿਸਾਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਪੰਗਾ ਲੈ ਲਿਆ ਔਰ ਮੈਂ ਸਮਝਦਾ ਕਿ ਵਾਕਿਆ ਹੀ ਇਹ ਪੰਗੇ ਵਾਲੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਸ਼ਾਇਦ ਮੈਂ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਸਪੀਕ ਇਨ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ
ਹਾਂਜੀ ਬੋਲ ਲਓ ਤੁਸੀਂ
ਮੇਰੇ ਖਿਆਲ ਸਮਝਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ
I understand Punjabi perfectly, sir. I was brought up in a Khalsa school and Khalsa college.
Good. ਤੋ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਇਹ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਨੇ ਵਾਕਿਆ ਹੀ ਮਤਲਬ ਇਹ ਪੰਗੇ ਲੈਣ ਵਾਲੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸਮਝਿਆ ਵੀ ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਪਹਿਲੀਆਂ ਐਜੀਟੇਸ਼ਨਾਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਦਬਾ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਗਿਆ ਭਾਵੇਂ ਉਹ ਸ਼ਾਹੀਨ ਬਾਗ ਦਾ ਮੋਰਚਾ ਸੀ ਜਾਂ ਕੋਈ ਹੋਰ ਪਹਿਲੀਆਂ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ ਸੀਗੀਆਂ ਪਰ ਇਹ ਕਿਸਾਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਮੋਰਚਾ ਇਹ ਸ਼ਹੀਨ ਬਾਗ ਵਾਲਾ ਮੋਰਚਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ ਇਹ ਬਹੁਤ ਉੱਪਰ ਵਾਲੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਤਾਂ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਕਿ ਮਤਲਬ ਹੁਣ ਪ੍ਰੋਲੋਂਗ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਮੋਰਚਾ ਪ੍ਰੋਲੋਂਗ ਹੋ ਨਹੀਂ ਰਿਹਾ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਵੱਲੋਂ government is deliberately delaying this process of negotiation and it is not coming forward for negotiations. But if this morcha prolongs for say a year or so or even more, then what will be the course of action of the farmers organizers, farmers leaders? Please.
Thank you, Ji.
So the question really is, what if it is prolonged? What if the government doesn't negotiate? What is the future course of action? Yeah. As I said, my own sense is that the political cost for the government is huge because every single day the movement goes on. The news, so somehow the suspicion in the minds of every farmer in this country that this government is up to doing something against me. Now, frankly, even today, I would say maybe 80% Indian farmers do not understand what these 3 laws are. But in a survey carried out 3 days ago, on the occasion of the 7th anniversary of the government, carried by a channel which is very favorable to the government, by a polling agency which is considered very favorable to the government. They have said that overwhelming majority of Indian farmers feel that Mr. Modi is being unreasonable in not negotiating with the farmers properly in a dignified way.
Right.
Now,
right.
this came out 4 or 5 days ago. As I said, this government does not understand constitutionality, economics, morality, or humanity, but they understand psephology. They understand elections, they understand surveys, they understand opinion, public opinion, and the consequences of that going against them. That's going against them. So my expectation is that the government would, sooner than later, speak to the farmers, try and hold another round of negotiation. But if that does not happen, and you're right, one can never be sure, what would the farmers do? I can tell you 2 or 3 things. Number one, we shall not disappear. We shall not wither away. I do not blame the NTCA protesters, Shine Bags. I do not undervalue them. Being a Muslim in India today is a very difficult situation. So what they did was great. What they could not do, they could not do. What you and I can do, sir, it's very hard for a Muslim to be able to do that on the street. You know? So they were wrong-footed. They were put, they've been pushed to almost a second-rate citizenship in this country right now. So, but yes, we shall not retreat. We shall not allow ourselves to be dissipated. We are here to stay. And we will not merely stay. We will do something. What will we do? We now know, after Bengal, we know what is the one thing that this government understands. You would recall that we had taken a politically very risky decision. The farmers' movement had decided to go to Bengal and campaign against the BJP. I myself did. I addressed several public meetings in different parts of Bengal. And so the first option open to the farmers' movement is to say, well, we spent less than 6 weeks in Bengal. Can we spend the next 6 months in UP? In Bengal, it was very hard for us to be understood. I can speak some broken Bengali as I can speak some broken Punjabi, but most of my colleagues can't. But in Uttar Pradesh, even if you went and spoke what you did, you would be understood in Uttar Pradesh. So this is going to be far more consequential. This is going to be far more difficult for this government to manage. And all right, if they want, if they dare us, that's what we shall do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Yogendra. Thank you all for attending and being part of this amazing conversation with Yogendra on a Tuesday night. Oh, sorry, no, it's Wednesday night in Delhi and in India, and for staying up for so late for us. We are always thirsting for information, but you have really clarified the information for us and brought it in a way that makes us understand it, as well as gives us hope that we can continue to support this movement from this side of the water. You have been a real inspiration to us for many, many years, and your work is so nuanced and so well layered that our confidence in you, as Mr. Janda has mentioned, the leaders of the movement, is well placed. And we will continue, as you say, also not disappear and not retreat. And please count on us for support in whichever way we can lend it. We wish you many good wishes with the summer season and the monsoon season coming up, and wish that you stay healthy and well and safe, and that the people in the movement also stay healthy and well and safe, and that there is good closure to this, and that the goodwill of our people prevails, and that the democracy continues to be upheld in a positive way, and that your fight will not be for nothing and not in vain. As you have said, this is an intellectual movement as well that can raise the profile and bar of Indian society, and the hope of the young people, the youngest country in the world, to have this kind of leadership is really important, and to have a succession plan for other leaders to come behind you and keep this movement going. So on this note, I'd like to thank you so much for your time, Yogendra. for your inspiring talk. And Magnus and others who've helped us organize this seminar and webinar online. We are very fortunate in the sense that we have this opening with COVID. COVID has some silver lining in the sense that it allows us to meet you across the ocean in this way, and you don't have to travel the long distance to be with us. But please come back to our communities if you ever can in the future. We welcome you with open arms. And again, thank you very much, and good night.
Thank
And stay
you.
well.
Namaste and Sat Sri Akal.
Namaste
I've
ji.
already given my email ID for anyone who wishes to contact me. It's on the chat box. Thank you. Thank you.
And
Sat Sri Akal.
Sat Sri Akal. And we will post the